We're live streaming now, just FYI. Good to go. All right. Welcome again. Might just open, Bruce, if you could do maybe I'll do a quick introduction of Mr. Gimmel, Bruce Gimmel. So a very exciting day. I think this goes back to about a 2-year journey of a request for a second independent on this Audit and Risk Committee. And so the day has come where we now have 2 independent members, which is great. So I'm very excited for Bruce to be here. I've known Bruce for a long time, Christchurch being a very small town. You know, our professional paths have crossed. For me personally, I think the greatness will be that we have very different skill sets. So I think that the stuff that I'm, my skill set and where I come from is probably not the stuff that Bruce is necessarily that passionate about, but equally on the other side, as you can see from his earlier questions, he's going to compliment me where my skill set is not as strong. So I think between the two of us, it'll take us forward into a great space. So welcome, Bruce. And we are a smaller hui today, but we've got management here, so maybe just give us a quick introduction. That'd be great.
Thank you, Annalisa. Christchurch is a small place, and if you play around in it long enough, you get to know most people in it. And it's a pleasure to see Pomeria sitting around the council table. She's my pro-chancellor at Lincoln University. I am the chancellor at Lincoln University. I have had a career in the Big Four accounting practices, and for the last 10 years, I've been doing governance work at a senior level. I have quite a lot of association with the Selwyn area through my work at Lincoln University, and also I sit on the board of Central Plains Water, which is an infrastructure asset which has some level of relevance for the Selwyn area. So by and large, I am deeply familiar and embedded in it. I'll just explain the difference in Annalisa and my skill set. Annalisa comes from an audit background. I come from a transactional background, which is obviously, but we actually do end up at the same place. But most of my experience has been in driving, has been in an effort to drive value and simplify organisations around that value proposition. So but I am an accountant, so you can be assured that I will still be fiscally orientated towards where we go. But most of the work I do will be structured around, my questions will be structured around, how does this add value? How does this fit? How does this work from a strategic perspective? How does this, make the boat go faster? And are we happy with those kinds of outcomes? And are we doing it in a manner which is managing risk and beneficial to the area?
Move us on to, I don't think we have any extraordinary business or any new conflicts of interest. We do have a conflicts of interest process, Bruce, which I can talk to you at another date, but you would have declared those through your appointment process, so we can. That then takes us on to the minutes from our last hui. If I could have someone move. Actually,
just a point of order here, sorry, Chair. We only have a quorum of 3. I wasn't here at the last meeting. Do you want to hold those minutes over?
But I can probably move them.
Okay.
You can second them.
I wonder whether Bruce is right there, because he's unable to vote on them.
Oh, yeah, of course. So, yeah. Okay, let's hold the minutes for true. Terms of references there, and the annual work plan is there for our information, which then moves us into my chairperson's Google report. So for the last quarter, there's a few things. So what have I been doing in the last quarter with regards to this Audit and Risk Committee? There's been a few things going on. So obviously working through the appointment of Bruce, which was great to get to where we have been. We also have met with court a few times and also been working them through with their succession plan and the reappointment of a new chair. I'm not sure how far in the process. I'm not going to say, but I've been working through that process with management. And there's also been just some other sort of matters that I've been working with Sharon in the support space, and also Tim and Alison. Also have been corresponding with Audit New Zealand with regards to the long-term plan and making sure that is on track. And then again with Tim and Alison, just working through that kind of reset of the Audit and Risk Committee with our terms of reference, our annual work plan, and therefore forming the agenda. So that is it from me. Someone could take my verbal report as, or I can move it if someone could second it.
Happy to.
Thank you, Bruce. All those in favour?
No.
Manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. You'll recall last meeting we talked about the internal audit services tender process. That the tender process closed on the 24th of April, and now we're in the evaluation process, and hopefully we'll have a preferred provider appointed in the next few weeks, and that will then allow us to start the 3-year work program of audits that we've talked about before on our business critical functions. The second update is that we are in a recruitment process for a risk manager, and we have got a couple of good candidates, and I hope to have someone appointed by the end of this week, and they'll pick up on the risk work that we've started to do. And on the agenda, we have a risk framework that I put together a number of years ago. It's been updated, but that's just the beginning of creating a solid framework for the risk process at Council. I think that's about all I've got to say, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any questions, Tim?
Yes, I have a quick one, Tim. The risk management policy that you've got here, is that's draft, obviously draft policy?
That's correct.
What's the process of it of getting that policy in place? Is it this group? Does it go back to council? How does that?
Well, I think we'll get our risk manager appointed. They'll pick that work up and progress it, and then I imagine it'll come back to this committee.
So it's the policy itself as opposed to the appointment process. The policy, setting that policy, wouldn't that be council?
Yeah, if it's okay, Madam Chair, can I chip in? Tim's absolutely right in terms of, again, this risk and audit group have a really important part to play in terms of recommending the risk template up to council. So it should come back here, and then part of the review is that risk and audit will recommend to council that they adopt the risk assessment framework.
So it's going to be a regular theme, a regular theme for me today. As the only councillor here, I'm going to be asking that question a lot today to make sure that things are being channeled back to council.
I'm really happy to make sure that we channel things through the right place. So ask away.
Thanks.
Sorry, just quickly.
Sorry, Bruce. Yep.
I'm manager. Are we discussing in amongst that, Phil, were you referencing the item 11 on the agenda as well? Correct, the risk framework?
No, I was talking about as it is in the, I'm not sure item 11. Hang on, I'll tell you what item I'm talking about. I'm just following it through as it is in diligent. If it's as it jumped, is it?
So perhaps we've
got the question is, are we taking that item now, or do we have a presentation?
We've got a presentation.
Okay, cool.
PwC are here to present the draft risk management policy and framework.
So just the way it's diligent, it looks like one flowed on from the other. So my apologies.
Okay, so there's no further questions with regards to
So I'd like to welcome Yoni, I hope that name's correct, from PwC. And you've got a presentation that's on the agenda that you can speak to. Have you got that available to you? So just as way of introduction, we've talked to PwC only a few weeks ago, so they put this together very quickly. So thank you for that. And this is just the beginning of the risk framework and policy. So I'll hand over to you to present, and welcome to the Audit and Risk Committee.
Thank you so much. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jonita, a partner at PwC, focusing really on internal audit and risk. And I'm standing in today for Curtis Morton, that would have presented the documents that we've prepared. Unfortunately, he's on bereavement leave today, so I'll be stepping in for him. So in the back, just to provide really a brief overview of the two documents that we've provided. The first being the work plan for risk management and how we refresh those risk management practices. And the second one being the policy and framework for risk management. So when we look at the work plan, we basically focused on four key areas where we think the focus of the refresh for the next wee while would be. And in that document, we describe kind of why we would be looking at those four areas, the specific steps throughout the next 12 months, and then also just how the council would be involved and the Audit and Risk Committee, just providing those touch points. So I'll just briefly look at the four specific areas. The first one is really on this risk strategy and governance. So the focus is really what are kind of those main building blocks and foundational blocks that's required for risk management. And it's...
Sorry, Madam Chair, can I just jump in? Do you want to get it up on the screen? That might be easier. I don't know if everyone's got it on their diligence. And could you help?
Page 17 of diligent,
Yeah.
has everyone got access to that?
I just thought it might be better if it was on the screen so we could look at it while you talk to it. Kylie, can you?
I've got it on my computer, yes. Sorry about that. I thought it's part of the report. So it is on page 17 and 18, the work plan. Apologies for that. So it's really looking at that risk strategy and governance piece. It's all about those foundational blocks that needs to be in place. And those foundational blocks is really looking at the governance structure that must be clearly set, and then the refresh of the policy and procedure document. So we've taken an initial look at the policy document and have updated it, but there's still more work required, specifically when looking at the risk categories, the likelihood and the consequence tables, and then also that refresh of the risk appetite statements. So that would be one of the focus areas. The next one is really looking at risk appetite and also culture. So often when we refer to risk, we say it's just a tool in the toolbox. It's not something extra or additional that needs to happen, but it is how do management really make risk part of their day-to-day operations, and also just the way that they make their decisions. So the focus there would be, as part of the work plan, is how do we bring that to life a little bit more as part of management discussions, tell those stories as to how have we integrated risk as part of the normal day-to-day, because it must really be part of the fabric as to how we operate. It's just a different lens that's applied. The third area would be the risk management life cycle, and that is really described in the framework as the different steps that will be taken, how of risk management and how it would be brought to life. And there the focus would be, once the policy and procedures has been formalized, How do we train the people, make sure that they feel comfortable with the roles and responsibilities and also the different tools available to use? And then also to refresh those top risks. And what we see really valuable is to have management perspectives, but also council perspectives whenever the top risks are refreshed and refined, because both parties provide different lenses, again, across risk. And then lastly is looking at the enablers, because often we still need some documents and enablers to help us progress risk management. And there we'll start off with a simplified risk register, some templates that could be used for reporting, and these would really be evolved over time, also taking guidance for the committee of how much information is required, or if too much information is really provided in those. And over time, it is also to see whether an additional tool, should it be required, should be considered to make kind of more data-driven decisions, if that is the way to go then. The second document is really the policy and framework document, like I mentioned, but I won't walk step by step through that one, and just open it up for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I was getting a little bit confused around. So the policy and the framework, the risk management policy and the framework, is that work to be done, or are you asking for the committee to endorse it, send it to council today?
No, I think
So these documents are your old documents.
They have been updated,
But
I believe more work needs to be done. So this is just really an example of what a risk framework might look like going forward.
Okay, so it's just an FYI. We're not looking for endorsement today.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Some more work needs to be done.
Yes, more work needs to be done, specifically to bring it to life a little bit more from what are we currently seeing the consequence, likelihood, and categories being.
Because I've reviewed the policy and the framework, and I'd say there's a lot of work to be done, not just a little bit. And so we probably don't need to spend too much time going through the documents today. I mean, it's great to know that PwC that you're going to help us with this. This is great, but I think these documents will need to come back to us when they are finalised, and then we can endorse them to go to council, because there's a lot of work for them to be done. They still look like your documents from 8 years ago. And I mean, you've picked up on most of the key themes, but like the impact criteria matrix is very outdated. It's still although you said it's going to make reference to the 2018 standard, it's actually, the pictures and all the references are still to the 2011 standard. So yeah, I don't want to review these documents twice, so maybe we just wait until they're actually shown.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry it wasn't clear. It wasn't asking this committee to endorse. That what the team were wanting to show is the shape and direction of travel, and having brought PwC in. Actually, what we're looking for is some feedback from this committee in terms of, is the direction of travel that's being presented here right? Is there anything you think that we might be missing, that we need to put additional focus on, so that as this is further developed and brought back to the next risk and audit, making sure we've had the opportunity to capture your thoughts and feedback. So it was showing that general direction of travel, how we're trying to link it in, and then for us to be able to take any valuable feedback to make sure we incorporated into the draft document that will come back for approval to go forward to council.
No, that's great. And I think, you've kind of hit the nail on the head with the foundation document. So let's do a refresh of the risk management policy, and that policy being the what, the why, and the who. I always like them to be two separate policies, but I mean, it's just thought of one. And then the framework being the how-to document. So making sure that the framework is the how does Selwyn do risk management across the entire organisation, and making sure that aligns to good practice, which is the 2018 standard, not 2011. And just concentrating on that impact criteria matrix. I think a good where it works really well and setting up Selwyn up for success, because it's so great. I've been waiting for this for so long. It is so great that we're getting some help. It is so great that you're going to have a person owning this. but setting us up for success so that if you co-develop this, like I don't want PwC to give this to us, and so please don't give it to us. Make management get involved. So I want that impact criteria matrix to be co-developed. So as an example, when you are developing the financial criteria, you are doing it with Alison. When you're developing the health and safety criteria, you're sitting down and having a conversation with Steve and Steve's team and making sure it aligns to our health and safety system. So please don't give us a PwC one off the shelf, because I'll throw it right back. So that sounds like we're on track for that, which is wonderful. So set us up for success. And that framework will also then obviously, and this is more for the committee because I know you obviously know all this, but it will align to what kind of reporting is going to be coming up to the Audit and Risk Committee. And that's where, when you look at our work program, we say that we will be getting the top 10 strategic risks every quarter will come to the Audit and Risk Committee. And then once we get to a higher level of maturity, we may be doing a bow tie analysis on one critical risk each quarter. So that will all be in the framework. So you're setting us up for success so that then the reporting. So yeah, great to do all that first. Then we can start thinking about, strategic level risk and risk appetite as well. I mean, there's some good commentary in there around risk appetite, but I noticed that there was already some statements in there. And again, I didn't know, are they PwC's risk appetite criteria, or have they been co-developed with the leadership team? Because I think what good looks like is you're co-developing them with the leadership team. You're not giving us PwC's one off the shelf, because you'll just never get that buy-in. It's other stuff that I'm passionate about, Bruce. So,
Sorry, Madam Chair.
So thank you for your efforts. It's great. And it was just good to have that clarity around what you actually wanted today, which was more just the FYI of the journey that we are starting on, which is great. So I look forward to the documents coming back for us to have a review on. So that's it from me. So, do you want to?
Yeah, no, look, I'm going to, just from the Chief Executive's perspective, Chair, you asked for a little bit of guidance on this one. I'll look, because I get all this, and this stuff's really useful. What I would suggest is that for us to really be able to consent the framework and the policy and the program, I will need to understand how this integrates with your decision-making protocols, okay? Because I've found risk is really important for understanding the parameters of the business, but it's not a decision-making tool. It's your purpose that drives the decision-making protocols. And this contributes to the information supplied and the appetite to absorb, but it is only a part of it. So I looked at it and thought, there's an awful lot in here, like you suggested, Chair, that appears generic, that needs to be washed out. And then you guys need to pick the bits which really integrate with and add value to the process, to the program of decision making and then subsequent management. Because if we embraced all this, asked you to embrace all this, all you do from a managerial perspective would be respond to it. And that doesn't help get from A to B. Okay, so if you understand our appetite, the appetite of council, because that's and management for the risk, and I would suggest so as a council, we're probably down you're not going to be up the risk, the bleeding edge risk aggressive, new tech company. But what you're going to try and do is blend that in, and then show me how that speaks to purpose and how that works. Because if we do all this, all you'll just end up doing is reporting risk and not doing anything. Okay.
I think, Sharon, you can go next if you like.
I was going to just wrap it up.
Oh, okay. I guess my question, comment really, and again saying just some guidance. But then Bruce, I've written down here the overarching philosophy, what our appetite is, run through the policy into the decision-making process, but tightened up. Like here, it's clearly two different documents written in two different eras, and which is why PwC is coming, of course. The first document, which is the one with the triangles on it, is great. easy to read, easy to follow. Then we go into a lengthy Word document, which gave me a headache by the time I got to page 4. So something that is easy to follow, easy to read, and easy to see. And I really like your idea, the comment you made, Bruce, about right into the decision-making process, so we can see risk coming right the way through. That's what I was going
to. I'm Megan. Yes. Just to wrap this up, so apologies that we weren't clear from the start about what this is. So I think that this is the start of a journey, and we know that this has been a much needed focus. And so this is our starting point. And the intention will be is that when we have our appointed our risk manager, there will be a series of workshops, because it's the workshops and the ownership from governance down through CEO down to the rest of the organisation that will help inform the workshop. So so that's a really important part of this. But sometimes we have to have a starting point, and the assistance that we'll get from PwC is that we don't want something generic, but sometimes we have to have some templates as a starting point to start off some discussion. So that's kind of where we find ourselves. But the ideal aim is that risk is pervasive through the organisation in terms of risk management, risk appetite. And so in terms of when we are ready to bring all of this together, it will be undertaken through a series of workshops that will build the risk profile and the risk framework for this organisation. And realistically, that will take a good 6 months to work through once a new person is appointed. So I'm excited about the future and our starting point and what will look like hopefully by the end of the year.
Thanks, Sharon. Just the last item within the risk report which was something that aligns again back to our terms of reference in our annual plan, and a conversation I had with Tim and Alison a couple of weeks ago was as putting up one of our strategic risks. So you'll notice that the cyber risk has been added in there, which is great. But going forward, I know this will take time, but if we can have an action for our next TUI, please, that we do. And I don't think it's too ambitious, but I would like to see what our kind of top 10 strategic risks, because you've actually already got them, Tim, I think. They'll need a refresh, so you're not starting with a blank piece of paper. And then if we do pull out one or two of those risks, how do we, and some people love bow ties, some people hate them, but if you do go down that path, I mean, this is great, but it's more of an FYI on a generic cyber risk as opposed to how's this risk relate to us at Selwyn. So a great starting point, but maybe if we can just make sure that we just take it to that next level for our next TUI that pulls out another one of those.
Madam Chair, can I make a suggestion? Because I think that our risk register is so outdated that part of pulling the risk together and part of those workshops will be actually identifying what our strategic risks are. But what we can bring back to the next TUI is the cyber risk. So we have a new chief digital officer who's done some great work in the cyber risk space, and I think that we'd probably be in a really good position to bring that back, and Matt could do a presentation on that because he's already looking at that. And then in terms of the risk register, absolutely needs to be refreshed. It is outdated, and I would prefer to bring something back as part of the whole risk assessment, an updated risk register, because at the moment it's quite cumbersome and outdated.
But I don't think it's too ambitious to be able to have those strategic risks come to the next TUI. It's 3 months away.
No, certainly not. Yeah, and certainly I was aware that the last agenda wasn't as comprehensive as it could have been, and then time went on. Our recruitment process wasn't successful the first round for the risk manager. So this was an effort to show some direction of travel for the whole risk framework rather than come up with something that's even near complete. So that was the intention of this agenda item.
And so we get to, I mean, even if you can show us, you know, in our next copy that they
It isn't so much the risk manager coming in, it is the, I'm just thinking about working through the long-term plan, and there is an intended break throughout July for councillors, so it's about that ability to pull councillors together, because actually we need our councillors to work through some of our strategic direction. So we will have a look at that and see how we can best enable it. I might have a slightly different view on that in terms of this is quite a different journey, but we can talk about that offline.
Rightio. Let's there's nothing else on the risk management report. Have someone move it, please.
Yep, happy to move.
Thank you, Phil. Bruce, are you happy to second?
Absolutely.
All those in favour?
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Annalisa. So starting on page 50, so this Treasury report is up to period ending March 31st. So just going into page 50, so we've got three key tables in there. One is our debt, one is the cost of the debt, and the last one being our cash investment. I think it's just worth noting in this report that it's always been historic in nature. It needs to change its focus. We've seen through the long-term plan discussions that we've had that we are going to be moving into a situation where our debt number is going to increase. So I'd like to move this report to more of a projected future thinking report, and it's sort of linked back to our last conversation on risk as well. Where are our financial risks and how do we best leverage that in where we can? But like I say, this report just now is purely at a point in time. So our debt position has changed a little bit since the last quarter. We're now sitting at a gross debt of 145, net debt of 124, which is essentially just our debt less our current cash in hand position of 21. We do still have the Westpac 10 million facility that we've never drawn down on, and it's certainly not the intention to touch that at this point in time. Our net debt to total revenue changed a bit, but that's in keeping with the additional debt that we've taken on in the last quarter. And obviously our headroom as well. So I mean, going back to our treasury policy, we did increase our debt from what was 160% up to the 220 mark. That headroom is reflective of the 220 that we're at just now. Just moving down to our cost of debt. So we've got 93 million, which is our fixed debt position. And that's sort of sitting at 64%. Pre-hedging, post-hedging, we've got about 1.5% movement between the two. Cash investments, we don't have anything on term deposit just now. So our pure liquid cash is sitting with our 21 million, which is noted a table above. So just moving on to page 51. That is just a summary of all the interest rates that we have against each LGFA tender that we have drawn down on. So that varies quite a lot. And there's a little table on the right-hand side, which is the funding summary. So again, that's based on where we are just now. So within 0 to 3 years, we've got the 60 million that we either roll over that debt or we pay down. Based on where we're at with our long-term plan, I would expect these numbers to be rolled over. And be just underneath that, we've got our 3-year to 7-year position. And again, similar to the one above, it's where we landed with a strategic investment strategy that plays a part in this as well. And versus where we land in our long-term plan, whether or not we roll those numbers or we would look to pay down, but I suspect it's more likely we would roll those numbers. Just sort of flipping over to page 52. Again, it's a bit of a regurgitation of some of the information on the previous slides. So we've got our fixed debt position, our total exposure, and our various interest rate swaps that we've done to try and reduce the impact on what would go into our ratepayers. And our last page on this is, again, just a bit of a regurgitation on what I've said previously. So the LGFA borrower notes, this is where we get almost a little bit of an advantage, and I'll call that a little bit of a payback on our debt. So we can invest and we'll get an interest rate return back. So that flows into our revenue line. I think, like I said in this report, we have made a few tweaks and changes in the finance team recently. So Ferranges Radcliffe started about 2.5 weeks ago. Like me, is not really a huge fan of this report. We do want to change it, like I said, to move it to more projected position, look at where our budgets are and how that sits with our long-term plan, annual plan. It's just now, if I look at that, and I think anyone else looking at that, it's a point in time document. We can't actually see where our key risks are. So I'll stop there and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Bruce.
Just from a curiosity perspective, through you, Chair, do we take any advice on debt?
Yes, we do. So PwC, we work with PwC as our treasury partner. So hedge book and the information comes through their dashboard that they provide for us. I think it's worth noting that once we get a little bit more maturity in the team, we probably would look to bring some of that work in-house. But just now we do take a lot of advice from PwC.
So from my perspective, we appear a little over-hedged at the moment. I wouldn't mind seeing our treasury policy on this. Do we have one? Well, obviously we've got one, do we?
We do have a treasury policy that was updated back end of 2023.
Yes.
I
Do you
can
think
send
you
you
could
a
just
copy
file
of
that through to me?
version.
That'd
Yeah.
be fabulous. Thank you,
Yeah.
Anne. And I just think I note that within your swap profile, you've got we've got 3 head starts really, 2 significant head starts and 1 head start for April. If you have a look down the hedge profile with the ANZ, noting that we've got them at 3.9, 3.9, and then you've got 2 probably, yeah. And then we've got a fabulous one starting 15th July out to 2029. So you've got 3 head starts in there. Have you had any advice on the head start market at the moment?
Again, that's came through from PwC.
Yeah. So we've got an inverse yield curve at the moment, which may sit around for about another 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And those profiles are about 200 points below the market. So if I was you, I'd be looking closely at what your projected profile needs to be, because you could grab some quite cheap money starting a couple of years out at the moment. It's the only first time this happened since the GFC. But it's going to sit there for about another 3 or 4 months, I think, and then after that it'll disappear. So what you've got, normally a hedge profile looks like that. Yeah. This one's looking like that. So I'd be grabbing it if I could. It will be, well, it's 200 points below the market at the moment. And the last time that we moved, it was the biggest movement we've had against it's 175. So, and I don't think you're ever going to see money as cheap as it has been, right? Let's be really clear about that. That was an aberration in the market. So if you can pick it up at that kind of number, and then your long-term debt rate is looking, look, I'm not buying it for you, but I think I'd be talking in some detail to PwC about whether or not we want to grab a bit more.
Yeah, and I think, Bruce, it's fair to say, as we speak, there is currently a meeting going on with PwC to that very point.
Yeah. So I'm anticipating that. Can I look at the Treasury policy, and then we might want to actually keep a little bit of, you might have an opportunity to do that, but you might be doing that intra-period. So it's not consented through here, but I'd be looking at it, okay? Okay.
Thanks, Bruce. I also comment on this report as a non-Treasury expert. So it's good that you're looking to kind of maybe refresh it. It looks really nice, doesn't it? But I kind of read it and it kind of reads to me a little bit like an elevator pitch. Like, you know, this is going up, this is going down. So the commentary is actually just telling you what the numbers are telling you. So what would be really useful for me, and maybe my fellow Audit and Risk Committee members, would be the why.
I think that got sort of going
So
back
just
to
kind
my,
of like things going up, things going down, or,
Yeah.
you know, why? Why have we taken on more debt? Why have we, without turning this into a thesis, obviously, I don't want to create
yeah,
a huge
no,
amount of more
you're right. I
debt,
mean, I
but
don't want it turning into War and Peace, but it needs to tell the story.
it's-
And it needs to tell the story around where things, not just where they are just now, where they're moving to, why we haven't, if we haven't drawn down a debt, and it could be as simple as I'll sort of look to Tim Mason a little bit, our capital spend, we may have shuffled that programme a little bit. So that could be some of the reasons why we've got variances, but telling that story within the information.
But I mean, like, why you haven't drawn down that 10 million is pretty obvious. It's the most expensive debt we've got, so we don't want too much of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But equally, it is there as a buffer in the event we're out of a cycle with LGFA.
No,
as
I
well.
appreciate that. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, happy to.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, working out technology. Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair and councillors, and Bruce, welcome. Look, this is the first of two papers today, which is focused on just a bit of a review and refresh of some of our key people policies. The first one, the Code of Conduct, is a key document for council and councillors, and there are a few minor amendments we're proposing through this paper. The primary focus is moving the panel and moving towards independent investigators, noting that the Mayor and CEO do have the ability to do that initial check on any code of conduct complaints. And they will determine the best approach forward from that point. And so we're just simplifying the code of conduct in a way. And to confirm, the paper will then go to council for approval in June. And just to note that the councillors need 75% support to then adopt this paper based on the code of conduct rules. So happy to take any questions on this paper. Hopefully it's fairly straightforward.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, actually, I wasn't on, but I am on now, so I want to do something. Just a quick one. I wonder, I know in the past there's been two sets of values that the organisations have used, those for elected members and those for council themselves. Something that I've raised previously, and of course the code of conduct is very much linked into that value set. Is there a second code of conduct, or do we just have one code of conduct, and how's the work been done on cementing the values?
Look,
So just reiterating your question there, do we have two separate code of conducts, one for employees and one for elected members?
I
Is that
don't
your
know.
question?
I guess that's what I'm
your
asking.
question?
That's the question. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So through you, Madam Chair, look, I can answer that. There is at the moment a code of conduct for councillors, and my team are currently working on a staff code of conduct, and that will be part of a broader policy review program that I can touch on briefly a little bit later when we talk about our people reporting. But certainly we are looking at, this is primarily focused on councillor code of conduct. There will be a different staff code of conduct because the employment relationship warrants a different set of rules.
Okay. The other part of the question was around the two value sets that we use as the baseline for the codes of conduct. I mean, I'm aware that there are two value sets, and how are we going and putting those two value sets together so that we're going to have one set of values for Salmon District Council?
I think that's part of a bigger conversation that was had with the Mayor and myself at the start of this year around refreshing values. And we haven't got to that stage yet. So as it stands at the moment, the Code of Conduct is on the current values. And I think as we progress through this year, it will the values can change within the code.
So which set of values is the code of conduct based on, the elected members one or the Selwyn District Council one?
So the values are based off the elected members one through that falls out of the legislation.
Okay, I guess, look, I mean, as you said, I just highlighted some work that's obviously still out in the ether. So yeah.
It's an interesting question, though, isn't it? Because I imagine that the values for elected members will be through LGNZ and through legislation, but the values as an organisation of Selwyn District Council for its employees, its kaimahi, I wouldn't think every council in New Zealand is going to want to have the same values.
No, but I think there would be a closer sort of reflection at each other.
Well, they'd have to be, wouldn't
Yeah,
they?
you think so? I mean, the overarching values of honesty.
Yeah.
This is what that means. This is what that means. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that that's an oversimplified one, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Chair, I've got a practical question in relation to code of conduct, and I'm just for me being curious, really, because Pomera can probably back me up on this, but we've actually had a couple of instances where our code of conduct has actually been difficult, has created a difficulty for us. The first one was down at the university when we had because our rainbow community is very, is a huge part of the community, but so is our Pacifica women who are deeply religious. Now, how do you guys manage, because it's been a challenge for us, and where the challenge was obviously was in the transactioning community wanting to use bathrooms, and that drove our Pacifica women down to McDonald's down the road because where does that, how do you guys manage that, because you're really dealing with two different value sets, one deeply conservative and another one deeply liberal, both valid, and and I note within your code of conduct you respect all, but how do you do that when they collide? I'm just curious as to how because it would help us, wouldn't it, Pomera? We actually ended up having to default back to some male and some female bathrooms just to accommodate that, which then offended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually that was going to be my response. So a piece of work that Steve and his team will be undertaking, but it's not at the top of his list of priorities yet, is around our diversity policy. And we have quite a diverse workforce. And whilst we do have a diversity policy, it is probably, or a semblance of some guidelines, that's an area that we need to be doing more work on. We haven't got it quite right yet. And as challenges come up at the moment, we're looking at them on I hate to say case-by-case basis, and about making the judgment call. But
the
yeah,
the difficulty is when you have someone's religious beliefs that don't allow for the diversity policy to actually be as diverse or as inclusive as you would like it to be, and then who trumps who, and how does that work? And
that's the $1 million question, isn't it? And one I don't have an answer for.
When you do get one, Sharon, can you let me know?
I'll sell it to you, Bruce, for $1 million.
Look, these are really interesting. But when you establish a policy, you're codifying something which may create legal issues for you. Is the key here, right?
So just summarising this document, as you said, it seems pretty simple changes, and it is just about the agreed independent investigators being added to that. So I don't have any. I'm happy to endorse. We're only obviously endorsing this to go up to full council.
And this is a stepped change because we've never had a panel before. So this is a part of our quality improvement to make sure that we're set up for the future and that we have that go-to panel.
That's good.
So just on a pragmatic level, so how would it work? It would be the chief executive, the mayor, and one of those people, or?
Through you, Madam Chair. So at the moment, the way it would work is a code of conduct complaint would be either lodged with the chief executive or the mayor, and then they would do an initial assessment as to the merits of that complaint, and then the mayor would likely then direct that back to the chief executive to then commission whatever appropriate level of investigation it was, and in most cases, trying to resolve these through conversation and through relationships and keeping things safe and steady would be the primary, and the panel is there as the last resort if it can't be resolved through an initial face-to-face.
Can I just point out an inconsistency a little bit with the whistleblower policy, because you do allow a route to the Auditor General as well. So that would you probably want to read them together, have an opportunity for the panel to come together otherwise, because I could see potentially a complaint with the mayor or the chief executive going that way.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, Bruce has raised a really good point. Once we've got hopefully these two papers through today and garnered your feedback, then we might actually look at whether or not the Code of Conduct needs a section on the protected disclosure, because it is quite a unique and quite a directive approach. And if we take your feedback on board, that might be something that I'll take away, and we look to insert a section specifically about that piece of legislation to clarify. In that circumstance, you wouldn't go to the panel, you would run a very separate process, but very directive process.
I've actually got quite a few questions on the protected disclosures policy, but there is, as you say, there is a little bit of overlap and alignment, but maybe if we're okay with this one, can we move Code of Conduct?
Happy to move.
Yeah, second.
Yep, second that.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Right, that moves us on to the whistleblower. Now, maybe we can just start off, just so that we don't end up down the confusing simple minds, the policy and the framework kind of conversation. What have you put up in front of us, and what are you looking for us from today? Like, what's the draft? What's the new bit with regards to fraud risk policy, a fraud risk response plan, and the protective disclosure? So I'm used to working with those three documents. Yeah. I'm used to kind of running investigations myself. So maybe just talk us quickly when you introduce it. What have we had, and what are you putting in front of us, and what do you need from us today?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So what you do have in front of you at the moment is, in terms of the attachments, you've got the current, as it stands today, fraud policy with the references to the 2000 Act, the Protected Disclosure Whistleblower Act 2000. And so that is an out-of-date piece of legislation, and you'll see within the fraud policy, it is quite dominating in the fraud policy itself. And we haven't had the chance to pull out that element, but that's the reason why we've attached that. So that is the context, that's the starting point. The second attachment you have is the proposed draft Protected Disclosures Policy, which only deals with our requirements under the Act around managing a protected disclosure. And that is part of our look and feel of what's going on in our policies at the moment for people. Have we got everything right? And in this case, we've identified that we've referenced we've updated the reference to the Act, and that Act has changed substantially in terms of how the protection for employees who raise these, and also opens it up to how our elected members and others can raise a protected disclosure and what that process is. So that the second attachment is the document we're actually asking for your feedback on today. So sorry about that confusion.
That's sorry, Chair. The document is the Protected Disclosures Policy,
correct, yeah.
Right? Not the fraud policy.
Not the fraud policy. The fraud policy is the starting point. That's the one that will need to change to pull it out. Okay. So the second, and again, this will be feedback that will come back through me and my team, that will then come back to full council for approval, because this is a significant policy and it will need full council debate and approval on that. So that will be the process of decision, and that will come to the June council meeting for approval. In terms of the policy itself and some of the way in which we've approached the development of this is very prescriptive. And so we thank Buddle Findlay for their support in giving us a fairly directive and fairly black and white process to follow as staff and as members of this council, and how we deal with protected disclosures. So thanks to them. Look, I'm probably then now over to you, Madam Chair, as to the questions, and hopefully we can get this through.
Anyone else have any questions first? Otherwise, I can kick off. The
only question I have is, so the only governance process in relation to protected disclosures, because I can't see any other one, and correct me if I'm wrong, is through the named people here: Chief Executive, People Director, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Independent Audit, Risk, Chair of Audit and Risk. But there is a reference to the Ombudsman at some stage.
Correct. So anyone can raise a disclosure with those nominated people within the organisation, but they also have the ability under the Act to raise a disclosure directly with the Office of the Ombudsman.
Yep.
And I think we have referenced that in the policy. So just to clarify that is the intent.
It's at item number 33, references the Ombudsman.
I saw that. I guess that's an external party. We're listed as an external party, but the internal parties are listed as those parties, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Thanks, Bruce. I've worked with these documents over the last couple of years with those changes that have come in under protected disclosures, and quite rightly, as you've highlighted, you can now, one of the key there were 3 key changes, I think, a couple of years ago, but one of them being that a person can now go to an external third party, that being the Ombudsman or the OAG. But when I've done kind of fraud awareness sessions or written fraud policies or response plans for organisations, I've made it very clear, or just to make sure that we don't have 300 kaimahi all running to the Office of the Auditor General. So making sure that it's clear that, this is your line of report, or the Chief Executive, if you're not comfortable there, Audit Risk Committee Chair, or there is an option, because obviously legally there is. Thanks for the clarity around the policy, the actual policy, and that's going to come back to us. So I had taken a few notes through that document, but as you kind of highlighted, it's outdated. But a couple of things to think about when you do go back and refresh that is there are a few big, bold statements in there around we will prosecute or we will take criminal. Now, remembering that we don't do that, we may prepare a case and we will take it to police, and it will be the police that will prosecute. We don't prosecute. And also it says we will take, I think we will, it doesn't even say we will make all best endeavours, it just says we will make all our effort to get back all funds. Now, I think just maybe soften the wording slightly to go, we will take all best endeavours, or where it is practical, because if we've had a theft or a fraud of $1,000, but it's going to cost us $20,000 to recover it, we'll probably make a decision not to. And when there'll still be a dismissal process in that, but we're not probably going to be spending the money to. So I'd hate for that to be in the policy that says that we are, because at the moment it's very firm on what we will and will do. So I think just have a look at those nuances through it. And also, I know good practice, protected disclosure is a bit different, but my understanding of what a good response plan looks like is the least amount of people as possible. So having that fraud control officer, one person that's normally very well trusted in the organisation, and it doesn't need to be the most senior person in the organisation, but it is someone that is well trusted, because I've seen many fraud investigations go wrong, and that is where every man and his dog is trying to solve it. And I would take out, there's a page in there that says how to gather evidence. So take that out of your policy, because we are never going to be running investigations. You're always going to be phoning out probably David Seath from Deloitte and getting a fraud examiner, a qualified fraud examiner, to be running the. So don't give people clues that they can start gathering evidence, and it's just, I've seen it go wrong so many times. So have a few things of those when you go through that policy, just make sure people try and keep it simple. And then maybe once we get to, we're happy with those documents, maybe running a few of those fraud awareness sessions just to upskill people so that I find when you do those sessions, not so that they understand the type of fraud that we are susceptible to at Selwyn, but it also gives them, the new additions to protected disclosure should give them the level of confidence to come forward, because they now know that we are legally, as an employer, legally obligated to keep them safe. So it's kind of twofold. I find those awareness sessions are really good. So, yeah, but again, all good steps in the right direction of refreshing this. That is all from move the attachment 1 and attachment. Oh, it's just the protected disclosures.
Happy to, Chair.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Now, people to update. I just wanted to, this is very interesting, but I just wanted to, it's a slight conversation with Phil yesterday actually, and this is probably more for you, Tim, is that, I don't know if it's because you felt a little bit beaten up in our last meeting, that we suddenly, but just keep going back to that terms of reference in our annual plan, because I can't see the relevance of this to the Audit and Risk Committee's terms of reference. It's very interesting and insightful. If I was trying to find an alignment, I would probably go that if you were presenting one of our top 10 strategic risks, which may or may not be the ability to recruit, retain and succeed our kaimahi, or there was a people element risk, then I'd expect this would kind of be the paper that would come up to support it. But at the moment, it's just sort of there, and I can't see where it aligns to the annual plan, but
Yeah, look,
you may come to that. Maybe you're going to gazump me.
I may not wow you,
Yeah.
but I might give you a little bit of context. Look, I think we employ 600 odd people, and within that, people are one of our greatest assets, but there is a bit of risk there. And probably what we can do, and this is the benefit of bringing this first report to you, is to test how it fits and how it lands. And in particular with this committee, the ability to recruit and attract the right capability to do the job at the right time with the right level of skill is probably one of our biggest issues. And at the moment, on the surface, it looks like we're actually doing okay. We've had a great recruitment. We're recruiting quicker than the normal market time frame. We have had low turnover, but we're masking some of the key areas and key roles. And so what I think we do is by bringing this forward, we can flesh out how we might bring this report back so it's more valuable to this committee to understand how people in a risk sense relate. So in a way, this feedback's already been quite valuable, and that was the direction is from me. So my apologies to Tim for that. But I wanted to get a sense of how people relate to the audit and risk, which is, I think, quite strong. But anyway, I'll let that talk.
I'm going to chip into that, if that's okay, Madam Chair. And again, this is about us evolving as an organisation and having dashboards and being able to monitor. And partly the reason why we wanted to bring this is I would anticipate for around risk and audit that you want some certainty and assurances that we are actually looking at our people and that we're looking at the key turnover and that we're looking for red flags. So again, this is about us starting our journey and actually starting to produce dashboards that looks at what's going on in our business, because we haven't had that before. And I think that that's quite important. We're really happy to be bringing this back if we think there's a significant variance and a worry. But again, it's finding the right place to give that assurance. And we thought that risk and audit was probably one of the first places to give it.
It does, as it relates to, it's probably one of your greatest risks, I imagine. So, but it's making that alignment, because when I started on this Audit and Risk Committee 4 years ago, Bruce was saying 200 pages. I think there were like 500 pages, you know, because everything just kept coming up. So let's just make the alignment between this is probably one of your greatest risks. And if we were to do a bow tie analysis or a deep dive on this risk, then because if you did have a people and capability subcommittee, then this report would probably be going to that kind of committee, wouldn't it? But
yeah, and there's no, at this stage, there is no need to have that kind of committee,
No.
which is, but it's in some respects a little operational in detail for council in some respects. But again, it comes back to risk and audit about people being our greatest asset and giving some surety and confidence.
that's a very good report. I found it very interesting. I just want to make sure that we don't start down that path of, but no, thank you. So anyway, to your report, do you want to give a brief overview of the report, and then we can take any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, the first, I think I've already touched on the first point around recruitment into key roles, and we'll do a bit more work about pulling that information out. The only other risk I think that to note, and there's something that the leadership team are going to start really looking into, is the issues around leave liability, both in terms of the perceived freedom for our staff to take leave under a fairly high workload. What happens when people don't take leave is then you start accruing a reasonably decent balance, and at the moment we've got a number that we've reported in this report that we need to get down, and so that is probably one of the other key points just to draw on in this report, is that we do need to do more work around managing leave liability over the next quarter. Thank you.
Right.
I did have a quick question. It was about leave liability. You said, is there a figure in here of what our current leave liability is? I see there's the annual leave liability is 2.157 million. What is our current, how much we currently carry?
That is that.
Oh, that is the
Yes.
current. Okay. Yep. The seasickness is interesting too. You're right. It's a great report.
Questions?
Well, just one quick one observation really. If you are talking about leave, I have found in the past that high levels of accrued leave and people in key positions can often be a signal that they're either trying to manage a situation which is an underlying issue for the business, so that is a risk. But the other one it can often point to is a health issue as well, and both of them create now significant issues for the business.
Yeah, thank you. And in terms of what management and leaders can do around that is one of the things we're going to work with our leadership team and our leaders in the organisation, is actually how to have those conversations with staff for those who have fairly high leave liabilities, is to make sure those conversations are occurring, make sure that there are leave plans in place, and that we are supporting the employees' well-being, and not leaving this data to sit on the table and do nothing with. We've got an obligation to ensure that we now do something with this.
It might be early days for you, Steve, so maybe it might be more of a Sharon question, but the high leave balance, how much of that do you think is more a perception of I can't go and leave because I've got too much work to do, compared to those that really are in critical roles and don't have a 2IC or don't have someone to...
I think that there's a couple of things. Some of the high leave balances are legacy issues, and it's about the culture of the organisation and wanting to make sure that our team take regular leave on a regular basis, and that's something that hasn't necessarily always been the culture within the organisation. And I think there's some elements, because we're a growing organisation and the growth has been quite significant over the past 10 years and been quite exponential at times. It is only recently that the FTE has grown significantly, so I would imagine there are some elements where staff haven't felt like they've been able to take leave because there's been simply nobody to cover. we're also having a change of approach in terms of people being able to cover each other's roles. And that's something that hasn't been done previously either, to make sure that we can enable people being able to go off on leave. So again, it's part of the shift in the culture of the organisation.
I worked with an organisation that had a real issue with high leave balances. So they introduced an initiative that said by the 31st of March, if your leave balance is less than 5 days, we will top you up with an extra 3 days. Problem went away overnight.
Yes, but we have
it was
to.
a corporate environment, but
Yes.
it was amazing how it was a big problem. And then suddenly overnight, everyone got down to under 5 days by the 31st of March because they were not going to give up those extra 3 days.
The nature of council business, I think if we run such a thing and we had large swathes of people wanting to go out of particular departments, it would literally grind our business to a halt. But your point is about initiatives, and that's what Steve is talking about, is what are the different initiatives that we have got, and it is very much based around the health and well-being of our workforce, because that's really important to us.
You'll also find, Chair, that it'll be a number of the recidivists will be sitting at very high levels in the organisation, possibly around the table.
I can imagine, Alison.
How many times I've had to
CFOs,
bully
CEOs.
partners and chief executives and CFOs out the door to take a break.
Yeah. All right. Nothing else on the people dashboard? Someone move that?
Happy to move. Love to see the dashboard.
Here we go for time. So,
All right.
and then we'll move on to maybe a quick update on the BCA accreditation. Good news story.
Sort of. Morena. Bruce, just mindful this is your first meeting, so a bit of background for you. Building consent authorities have been required to go through an accreditation process every 2 years since around about 2006 the regulations first came out. And that is a biannual assessment carried out by INs on behalf of MB, the results of which are generally non-compliances being raised and dealt with. And INs have the ability to reduce down the timeframe between assessments or extend it out if BCAs are doing an excellent job. We had our last accreditation assessment in October last year, and the list of non-compliances that you see there, 1 serious, 22 general non-compliances, 11 recommendations and 3 advisory notes was the result that we had at the time. As of the 23rd of April, we've now cleared all of those non-compliances and been reaccredited. INs have left us at medium risk, which means they're proposing a monitoring assessment in October this year. The report that I've put together there outlines we've got 2 options. Option 1 is allow that monitoring assessment to go ahead. Option 2, which is our preferred option, is actually ask them to do a full reassessment so that we can get back into a 2-year cycle. But as I've stated in the report, at this time, we just want to hold off on making that decision final, just pending what changes will come from the new government, etc. So a few in the pipeline. So happy to receive any questions, but yeah, certainly pleased that the process is complete.
Any questions?
No, this is one I'm going to have to absorb over time because I didn't know what I was reading here.
There was a lot
Apologies
of
for that.
information in the first report. So I guess just congratulations on closing out those 23. That's good. But so are you looking for your preferred option is option 2, and that is so that we get back into the regular cycle of review?
Yeah, absolutely. That will just keep the lid on our costs, etc., moving forward as well. So we've now got the total costs in for this assessment, which has come to 54,500, which is about 4,500 over what we've budgeted, quite significantly more than what we've spent in previous years. I think previously the highest cost we've had for accreditation is around about 42,000.
So when do you need to go back to them to make that request? I mean, obviously their visit is October. How much time do you have to give them to say we want you to do a full site as opposed to option one?
They would normally approach us about 8 weeks before when they plan to come with what their plan is.
Yeah.
So any time up till then.
Okay. So today, are you looking for us to endorse that option 2? Or is that a management?
I think
it's a management decision.
I think it's a management
FYI?
decision, yeah,
Okay.
and just keeping this committee
Okay.
informed.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. So nothing more from me.
That's,
There you go.
thank you. I just want to congratulate Vanessa and the team, because it's a significant amount of work that has gone into clearing. We have had the conversations, and Vanessa and I both agree that with Bob Love that it would be better to have a full review in October to go back to that 2-yearly cycle. I think it would be fair to say that INs have a new approach or a different approach to coming in with regards to their reviews, and I think that's because at a national level they've had some criticism over the years with regards to how they've undertaken BCA audits. So this time round they sent a larger team and they came from a longer period of time, which meant that they got into a level of detail into the organisation that we hadn't seen before. That's actually good for us, for a quality improvement point of view, and that's how we view this. So despite the fact that they raised a number of issues that hadn't been there before, we see this as positive, that it's given us an opportunity to get under our bonnet and another good piece of quality improvement.
Happy to move.
Absolutely. All right.
Moves us on to health and safety and wellbeing. Back to you, Steve, or?
No, I think we've got tab 17.
Apologies, sorry. Yeah, there's one before you, sorry. Council Building Commission Hospital Inspection Program.
So I'm just going to speak on behalf of Bob Love as he's away at the present time. So he and Tim have pulled this report together with my help as well. So this report is just to inform the committee of a piece of work that our departments will jointly carry out. Obviously, council has had quite a portfolio of new build work over the last 10 years, and it's timely to have a good look at how those buildings are stacking up in the long term. You'll be aware that there is obviously some issues around Green Park Hall that have been raised with council, and there have been some other issues on different council buildings that have been raised with council over the years. So we just want to have a really good stock take of some of our significant assets, and we'll report back to this committee with the findings at the end of the year.
Oh, did you have something?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
So through the chair, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So just to give you some extra context, the rationale behind this report was that as Vanessa said, the issue was identified with one particular hall that created some risk, and we determined, following discussion with council, that it is worthwhile for us to have a look at particular other buildings and identify whether the same risk exists or not, and to bring that information back to risk and audit.
Yeah, that's great. Again, it just comes back to that alignment piece, because when I was reading this, going, why am I reading this? You know, I was kind of going back to 4 years ago going, why am I getting this report? How does it relate to the audit? And it's just because it's got risk, because everything we do in this organisation has got risk in it. So just be careful that do you have a report that's got risk in it, that we start funneling it up to but I think once we have our strategic level risks and we can do that alignment, this may have a home.
Yes.
But I'll just try and do that alignment piece of where this, why are we looking at this report?
Yeah, And so my apologies that we didn't tie it back into that for you, or we didn't word that well enough.
That's right.
At the very least, though, through you, Chair, I would have thought this would have been informative from your asset management planning perspective anyway. So it's probably where it's going to end up in the future, unless it's a major critical risk. You know.
And this, partly why it's here, is that this might be a critical risk. You're absolutely right, Bruce. This might be a significant risk depending on what we find for the organisation.
And also for your information, Bruce, that probably in the last couple of years there's been some work to develop different subcommittees of full council, and there's going to be more additional work. So again, it's just understanding the terms of reference and scope of each committee, and because there was in price, there's been an infrastructure. Has there been an asset management or an infrastructure subcommittee?
So we're currently reviewing the governance structure, and there's a further workshop that will be held on the 5th of June. As it's shaping now, it may well be that we've got 3 key governance groups that have oversight of the business, which is council, finance and performance, risk and audit. And then in line with our future Selwyn and our long-term plan, there may be some committees that have a focus on specific strategy with oversight of specific key pieces of strategy, such as housing, climate change, and council will report back, and there'll be a mix of councillors and some independent expertise, as well as council team members, to help drive those key pieces of strategy forward.
Can I just suggest, and I don't want to drive the business of your team, but within climate change is huge. There's also AI change as well, which is reaching a sort of velocity which is extraordinary. So you want to look at dynamic change really, and how that has an impact.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Our new Chief Digital Officer is actually just writing a policy on artificial intelligence. So he's all over that, and he'll bring that into the work that he's doing around cyber risk as well.
So can someone move the council building condition risk and inspection program report? Thank you, Bruce. Second, Phil. All those in favour? Wayne, sorry to keep you waiting.
Madam Chair, if you might, Wayne and I are going to do a bit of a tag team on this one, and if I might introduce it and just make a couple of points. Firstly, I think it goes back to a previous paper that you talked about, is around that risk framework and the risk register and the risk policy. As what you've got today is a reflection on the current policy and the current approach. But I think as we go through this risk review, that we will start to see that both the way in which this report's shaped and the information we present back will follow that policy and framework quite closely. And so today, as much as about me listening to the debate and the conversation, so that we can start to reflect that and inform that approach to risk. I'm going to just maybe I'll take the second page of the report, and then I'm going to pass over to Wayne to talk about sort of the detail and the data that we're getting. But having been in the organisation now just over 4 weeks, I can't speak as an expert, but I have been really pleased and impressed by the culture and the leadership being shown by the Health and Safety Committee. And often that's a bit of a canary in the mine in terms of how culture around health and safety is approached here. And certainly with 24 people engaged in that committee and having them all fully qualified and trained, I think is actually a really good starting point. And what Wayne, Lisa and I are working on is how do we continue to engage and bring that enthusiasm and passion for health, safety and wellbeing, and support and utilise that skill set and willingness. How do we bring that into our program of reporting both the lag indicators, but also critically looking at our lead indicators around our critical risk work and the mitigation and our risk register review. So there's I think we've got quite a good heart. We've just got to do a little bit more work and now building the plan to further engage and get the best out of our team. So that for me, I hopefully is a bit of a summary on the second page, which talks about our champions and talks about the training and development. And I'll pass now over to Wayne to walk us through the rest of the report.
Would you like me to refer to the report first, or that? Okay. So, as you will see, that in the first quarter, that the health and safety and wellbeing teams have been focusing on critical risk management while supporting the health and safety champions and increasing their profile and engagement across the business groups. We think that we're in a better place than we were 2 years ago, and that's because people have been engaged in the process that we've got. We've also been involved in progressing 2 projects. We've seen improvement for the safety of our people with the introduction of body cameras for some staff in the field, as well as a GIS location of interest system, which will identify addresses that would compromise the safety of our staff or possibly compromise the safety of our staff. At the moment, we think that we need an improvement on that, and that we see that as being a great improvement for our staff, but that goes with the culture, so it'll be a change of culture. So if you are going out to a location, you would check on that first to make sure that there's no red flags that pop up to indicate that there's a safety issue. Wellbeing initiatives with staff, we've had flu injections, 135 on-site clinic visits, and 31 off-site ones. Hearing testing, promotion of the Talk It Out program. If you're not aware of that, that's a peer support program for staff where they can go to someone to talk to with any issues that they may have, health and safety and wellbeing wise. And also we've been looking at education of our staff on how to deal with challenging customers, which also comes as part of our critical risk with aggressive customers. So Steve's spoken about the Health and Safety Champions Committee and the training that they've received. We're also focusing on maintaining and refreshing training for new and staff who have been here for some time. Our focus is on the advanced driver training, four-wheel drive training, first aid training, fire warden and fire extinguisher training, situational safety and de-escalation training. And so all this training is that we've got our Compass system that records all that, so we can get reports out on the number of that. And what happens is that it's also managers are advised when refresher courses are required for that. So critical risk management update, you'll see that at the moment we have got 5 of our 6 identified critical risk teams up and running. We have 1 team that is due for the training next week, and that is the last team to receive that. That is the active construction, maintenance and contractors team, which will be led by Tim Mason as our sponsor from ELT. So with that critical risk, we feel that we have, with those 6 identified critical risks, we should be covering all the health and safety and wellbeing risks for our people. And we'll be reporting back once those teams are up and running. We'll be reporting back to the safety leadership team and the audit and risk team committee on those. We currently don't have any ICAM investigation underway, although we are awaiting a report from Fulton Hogan as to a near miss regarding some work that they were doing on one of our sites on Shands Road. Contractor assurance. So you'll see that we have our pre-qualification conducted by SiteWise. we're currently at 93% compliance with our contractors with site-wise, which is high. When there's an indication that some have fallen below that, then we contact them directly. Although we see that risk will reduce over time with when we have the maintenance contract out, when that goes out to one sole contractor. So future actions. So we'll be looking at the completion of training for all our critical risk teams by the 1st of July. We'll be working with heads of department to engage with the review of the risk registers, which is a major piece of work. The diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging project planning is commencing this month, and we're developing a community program with the marketing communications team for wellbeing with support us to support you. Any questions on that?
At the end of your presentation, are you pausing?
That's the end of that report. There is the dashboard PowerPoint that we've put out that you would like me to
keep going with your dashboard, and then we can do a question at the end.
Okay, so on the first page you'll see the reporting for illness and injuries to our staff. And you'll see there in the green where we've gone down and where we have gone up is in red. And off to the right-hand side, you'll see where the majority of the groups where those reported incidents occur. And then the next page, you'll see the reporting for the public and the use of our facilities. I'll just point out that it seems quite high on the community services and facilities, but that's where the majority of our members of the public are using our facilities and where the reporting is coming from. But if you look on the next page, you'll see the foot count to provide some comparison to those reporting the reports. So if you have a look at the aquatic centre, in 1 month, there was 52,000 people went through our aquatic centre, and yet the number of reported incidents is considerably low, which puts some context into the reporting. Onto critical risks, and you'll see the progress that we've been making there. As you see, that this it's been a staggered approach to how we've set up these groups, with the driving team being the first team to be up and running, and that's reflected in where we're going. As you'll see, we've had some good achievements here, what you'll see in green, but a lot of the stuff will be ongoing, and there's a lot of work initially for the first 12 months. But what we'll see is over time it'll be more fine-tuning of the work as opposed to getting into the nitty-gritty right at the start, which we're doing now. And then you'll see with our events on the next page how it's broken down into the critical risks. We see that there has been an increase in aggressive and violent behaviour, but again, it's reflective of probably the way society is going at the moment. But we have things in place to keep our people safe. You'll go over to the next page is the wellbeing statistics. And you'll see that we certainly have our people are using EAP services that we provide for them. And the Talk It Out statistics, you'll see in the blue 2024, there has been an increase in the first 3 months of the year as compared to last year, but we put that down to educating our people to let them know that that service is available. So it's good that people are taking that up. The contractors overview. You'll see that in March that we have 3 of our business groups now involved in doing the Dempstra checks on using the apps. This is something new that we've really been pushing with these groups for where people can do them out in the field. In the past, they haven't been able to do it, but they use the app on the phone. It's much more easier. It's much more engaging for our staff, and we can see that that's only going to increase. But we've been working with the teams and also with our digital teams to make sure that there's an improvement in that. And as you'll see, the site-wise statistics there, the average score, 93%, is very high. And when people fall down, they get the, as I said previously, they get a direct call from me. Any questions?
It's me. Just a couple of quick observations, Wayne, and thank you for this. Just on your greens and your reds are a little bit confused on a couple of graphs.
I noticed that where it says that they're down, they should be up. Where it says there's one there that says it should be up, so that's a fault on our part.
That's all right. You're dealing with a financial analyst here, so I'll look at everything. But just in terms of those critical risks, the way that chart reads, it looks like we haven't done much. Now, I know you've done quite a bit, so because a lot of that's ongoing, some of that stuff, so you actually probably want to detail that as ongoing, otherwise it reads like we've, from September 2022 to May 24, there's still a lot of in progress?
Yes, because we've only, we've had a bit of a kickstart. We looked at the critical risk groups some time ago, but there was a change. We had a change in staffing, and COVID came in, and we started out, and it was a bit of a false start, I suppose. And then we're trying to do it in a way that we get one team up, and it's like the domino effect is probably where we're at. And some teams are at different stages, but we're hesitant to put it into green. We've got some things here we've had in place for a long time that we probably could put it into green, but we want to be stringent in our assessment before we want to be 100% that we've got these things up and running. So that does take a bit of time. Okay. But we probably are further ahead than what we actually had anticipated.
Thank you. And one quick question for you, Chair. Do we get out and about? Okay, good. It's me.
So 4 things from me, Wayne and Steve. Thank you. So, yeah, Steve and I have had a couple of offline corridor around that independent health and safety review. I think it's been an action item for quite some time. So Steve's going to take that as an action to look at what the scope of that looks like, and whether it's it's critical risks, it's contractor management, it's governance, as an audit and risk committee. Are we doing enough? Are we getting enough? And I'm hopeful that we'll get to that. Because if you go back to the terms of reference and what our obligations as defined in our terms of reference, it says that we will monitor all aspects of health and safety legislation in the terms of reference as a committee. So I guess there's only 3 of us here today, but this is an area that I always feel a little bit nervous about, which I've reiterated to Steve, is that I know, a bit like Bruce's initial comments, I know there's lots of good mahi going on under the surface. I know that the committee's been set up and it's doing really well, and I know there's a lot of good work, but it's just I will feel much better and sleep much better at night when I know that I have that independent assurance that we're actually doing everything that we should do and we're getting everything that we should from a governance perspective. And the other way I kind of look at that too, and when you look at the scope of that, Steve, and again, we can take this offline and dive a little deeper, but, you know, are we actually, whether it's in alignment to the 45,001 standard, whether it's alignment to the Safe Plus model, but, you know, what alignment, so that bit about health and safety legislation as governors, are we doing enough? So that will be picked up in that assurance. I know Michelle Gilman well, she's done work for me on other boards. She's very, very good at what she does. So that gives me a little bit of comfort that she's still working with you guys. The critical risk bow tie analysis would be really useful if we could actually see one. So maybe each hui, if we could, these critical risks, the committee actually gets a deeper dive understanding of these, because what good looks like for me, coming to Bruce's point, is that you could ask any member of the executive leadership team, of the audit and risk committee, and actually full council. We're building, you know, we're doing remediation work on the swimming complex, or Foster Park kind of build that we were doing, or Aotearoa. What are the 5 critical risks? And you know what? We should be able to name them. And actually, without looking at this, could Phil actually tell you what the top 5 health and safety critical risks are? And if he's being investigated by WorkSafe, well, not investigated, but is he being interviewed by WorkSafe, which I've had the pleasure of going through that, can he actually name what those, and because they're on this nice colourful diagram and we read them once a quarter, they're not going to sink. But if we can get out and reinvigorate those site visits, which we did do for a while, we were doing that quite well. If we need to revisit those so that once a quarter, maybe we're actually getting out and about, we're actually seeing the risks, understanding the risks being inducted on site.
So you would like us to invite you? Is that what you're looking for?
No, it's all right. Wayne, I think Steve's got it in hand in terms of he'll work out something with yourself.
So yeah, first thing was independent assurance, consider the scope of that and alignment to ISO standard or something else, all those other criteria. Michelle Gilman's work around bow tie analysis, be great if we can see one of those. Site visits. Now the wellbeing, psychosocial stuff. Going to copy a great question from a governor that presented me with this question quite some years ago. It's great, Wayne, that you've got all these wonderful wellbeing initiatives, but how do I know that my people are well? This was a question that was given to me about 5 years ago, and I've always taken it as a great question. So you're doing all these wellbeing initiatives, but how do I know my people are well? Which I thought is a bloody hard question, but a very, very good question. So I just wanted to, I guess, rephrase of how often we do those cultural kind of surveys, because that's a really good opportunity to plug a little question in there around, you know, how are you feeling today, or how's, you know, and are the wellbeing initiatives actually benefiting you? So that was just my last piece of food for thought.
We do have there is a annual survey that we do that it's an independent, it's the wellbeing survey as opposed to health, safety and wellbeing, it's separate. So that's one way that we measure that. And I suppose another way that we could see as measuring it is the feedback that we get from the number of people using the services now. So you could say that it's the culture that we're looking to improve on. And I think that that's where we've done it. Our near miss reporting is up, and people are using the programs that we're putting forward.
Chair, just quickly, from my information, in relation to wellbeing and psychological health, to what extent do we take the responsibility for all of the health of the employee? Now, the reason I'm asking this is that It's our responsibility it's your responsibility, Megan, and our responsibility for people to understand what they do and the levels of stress and pressure that brings to them in a job, right? For example, you know, when we recruit someone, we must, and for frontline services, they must be fully aware of the level of interaction they'll have with the public and the pressures that brings on you. And it's our job to equip them with the tools to deal with that. But it's not our responsibility to ensure their well-being in doing that. They've got to take some level of responsibility for it, right? They need to be fully aware of what they're entering. We need to be able to equip them. But if we go too deep, we take a level of responsibility, in my view, which is probably personal. But I just want to understand what that means to Selwyn.
Yeah. Because
that's the bit I'm absorbing here. So a little bit of clarity.
That's a very good question. Thank you, Bruce. And it is a joint responsibility and there's joint ownership. And again, that's part of the work of not only the Health and Safety Committee, but actually right from the very start from employment, making sure we've got good policy in place, good guidelines right through the orientation to understand that this is a shared relationship. And in terms of being able to identify that as council, we provide the relevant mechanisms, pieces of equipment, etc. But here are the expectations that also go along around self-responsibility. And we do that. Are we strong enough on it? Potentially not. And again, that's a part of what we need to look at in terms of how we improve the quality of what we do.
No, I think the Chief Executive's articulated it really well. Yeah, it is a joint responsibility.
Phil.
I'm actually just going to ask if I can have a 5-minute recess. I appreciate if I leave the room, then I'm going to drop the quorum, but I can't wait any longer.
We are almost done, I think.
Okay.
That's the last item. There's no other questions on the health and safety report.
Happy to move.
Yeah.
Happy to second.
All those in favour?
All right.
Aye. Councillor, let someone move us into.
Happy to do that.
Second.
Happy to.
All those in favour?